What's up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Gamescript. Tonight, we're looking at Monday Night Football. We're looking at the Cincinnati Bengals versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Bengals are 9.5-point dogs, and they're playing in Jacksonville with a 39.5-point total. So things are looking bleak for the Bengals. But as we've seen recently in these games, the underdogs do have a chance to win. And when they do, it helps you out with your showdown lineups big time. And we'll get into that after this. Hey, what's up, guys? Simon Edwards at Pumacom here with Heat Seeker Sports, and you're watching Gamescript. Tonight, we're going to be looking at the Cincinnati Bengals versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. They're playing in Jacksonville. Jacksonville is 9.5-point favorites, and we're looking at a 39.5-point total. So not much scoring projected to go on in tonight's game. Jacksonville are huge favorites, and that's going to make it an interesting showdown slate. Spread is joining me today. Spread, what's going on, man?
Man, I'm excited to be back and talking about some more football. Definitely a fun weekend. I did well betting. Didn't have enough time to do any lineups, so now I get to jump back in the DFS streets tonight. And although it's a 10-point favorite right now, I still think it's an interesting game from a showdown perspective, and I'm actually more interested in making lineups than try to navigate a double-digit favorite here on primetime.
Yep, I like it. I like it. And it's going to be an interesting game because when you get these types of crazy spreads, you never know, which side of the favorite team is going to score. You could think it's going to be the shoe-in for the running back, and then all of a sudden you get a wide receiver captain or some sort of odd position in the captain, like a kicker or something. The defense of Cincinnati is going to be playing like a wounded animal tonight, and they're playing for basically their season lives. And I don't think that they're going to go down that easy. And 9.5 points seems like a lot of points, but Jacksonville's a high-powered offense. Spread, what's your breakdown of the overall viewpoint of this game?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes into it, it's so obvious how much this is a quarterback league. And we go from the Cincinnati Bengals looking like a true contender here, to middling around with the guy that, struggled to even con on a backup. So shows you how much one player can manage things. We've seen primetime unders hit. The total here tonight is, let me pull it back up. Let's see if his line's moved at all. Total here is only 40. The total here is only 40. So the odds makers aren't expecting a big offensive performance out of Cincinnati tonight. This could be considered one of their biggest games of the year remaining. I think that they understand that they're no longer true contenders. But with the chance to show it on primetime, I think it does give us an interesting option here to build some Cincinnati Bengals builds with the idea that they can keep this close. And, of course, that'll be the way to get different because Jaguars are going to be popular tonight.
Yeah, they will be super popular tonight. And the last couple games, we've had some heavy favorites or somewhat heavy favorites, and I've taken the underdog stance on both of those games and ended up doing well. Tonight's a little bit different because we're dealing with an offense that has lost their best player in Joe Burrow, and it's going to be tough to build lineups to favor that, but there are some things about Browning that are interesting. Like he had some sort of a high school touchdown record. He was so good in high school that they ended up.
Well, I can help you with that, Simon.
Yeah.
He actually went to Folsom High, which is about 30 minutes towards me, right, away from me. It's a northern suburb of Sacramento, and yes, he broke a ton of records there. And just to give you a little insight, when he went to Washington, they were quite disappointed with his work ethic. He definitely enjoyed the lifestyle of being a quarterback, on a college football team, which is what plummeted his draft stock. He was a huge, huge prospect coming out of high school. And then the poor play, not poor, but I'd say mediocre for what you expected from him, combined with bad reports, he fell down in the rankings. So, and I don't know, right? Because I'm not getting now. I know the Vikings weren't impressed with him. Who was the guy? I can't remember his coach. The guy that had the 20-year-old girlfriend, the coach there before, the defensive wizard. I know he didn't take a shining to him at all. Now, hopefully he's figured out, hey, this is my one chance to have an NFL career, and has put the work in. But the physical attributes are there, which is why I am intrigued with this tonight. Everybody's going to look past him.
Right.
But the reality is he's very, very talented. And if anyone could kind of come out of nowhere and carve out an NFL career, like we might have seen with Josh Dobbs. I mean, we could talk about that later. It would be this guy Browning, though, because coming out of high school, he was considered to be a top prospect for the NFL.
Yeah, and I was listening to a podcast with Maurice Jones-Drew, who's from that area as well, and he was talking about this game, and he mentioned a lot of that stuff about Browning that I had no idea about, like and get local guys like Spread and MJD who are very familiar with this guy as a quarterback. Spread, you got some sort of like weird noise coming out. Oh, okay, it's better now. So you get Spread and MJD who are familiar with this quarterback from a local standpoint, and you get some interesting insight from a situation like that, because everybody else is writing this guy off, but it seems that he does have like some attributes, as Spread was saying, where he was lighting it up in high school. He was a top prospect, got a little funky in college, and now he's getting an opportunity to play in prime time against the Jaguars with his team fighting for their playoff life. So it could be an opportunity for him to step up, and it could be interesting when we get into this DraftKings player pool. But before we do that, make sure to hit the like button. Looking for 15 likes to put out a shorter video later on, closer to lock, when we have a little bit more information to work with. And subscribe to the page, because I'm looking for 300 subscribers. But also, if you subscribe to the page, you can sign up for alerts, and those alerts will alert you when those short videos come out later on today, because I put them pretty close to lock. I try to get as much information as possible, so usually about an hour or two before lock. So you're going to want your alerts to make sure that that video is been posted. So Spread, now that we've covered all that, let's move into this player pool here. And first name that I see is Trevor Lawrence. Obviously, he's in a good spot tonight, but maybe with the game expected to be such heavy favorites in the Jacksonville side, maybe Trevor Lawrence isn't used as much tonight. What are your thoughts on his situation?
Obviously, he's in the top price for a reason, because for the pure raw points, it's going to be tough to beat him here. I prefer the ways that we were talking about a little bit before the show. I think you get Trevor in the lineup, but you choose another captain. It just feels like almost like the one I was complaining about you before the show, where the McCaffrey captain was really good, and everybody had it, right? Everybody had it, so it was tough for me to place and get different. So if it's the case where a Trevor Lawrence captain is the best route to go, I probably won't have success tonight. But I think we should look to some of these other players, and you had particularly mentioned one. So why don't we start our build there? Because since Zay Jones has been back up in the lineup, right? This guy goes from being pretty average to being pretty elite.
Yeah, like Calvin Ridley has had a few good games in a row now. 21 and a half, almost 22 points last week, and then 34 the week before that. Spread and I have been on him throughout these showdowns. We had him, I think, in the captain or at least our top wide receiver in that Buffalo game when they played in the UK. So Spread and I have been all over the Jaguars this year, and I like this as a potential Calvin Ridley game, because as Spread said, Zay Jones is back in the lineup, and Calvin Ridley's splits with Zay Jones are pretty favorable. And if you look at Christian Kirk, his is the opposite. Christian Kirk is the opposite and not favorable when Zay Jones has been back in the lineup. You can see his past couple weeks, 13 DraftKings points and 8 DraftKings points. So for whatever reason, maybe it's because they're using Christian Kirk in less wide receiver sets or whatever the case may be. When Zay Jones is in the game, Christian Kirk does not do as well, but Calvin Ridley does even better because there's more attention focused on another outside receiver. So let's put Calvin Ridley in that captain spot and just kind of go from there and see what we can come up with.
Oh,
you're muted, Spread.
Excuse me, I'm trying to use the mute as you heard the gardener earlier. Off and on, and I'll be quick. He won't be here too much longer either. But with Calvin Ridley there, we're at 13-8, so we have 36-2 remaining. Average remaining player 7-2. Like I said, I think you have to have Trevor in there for the raw points, just not at the captain. So let's go ahead and add him as well. Now we only have 63 left, so we're gonna have to be creative. I've liked Evan Engram all year, but he's been boom or bust. However, the Bengals have been susceptible to tight ends this year. What are your thoughts on Engram, or how else would you want to fill this out? We can't really just jam studs in here anymore. We've kind of married ourselves to this combo with the way we've started.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think from a raw points perspective, I think I might lean more Etienne than Trevor Lawrence on tonight's game, just because of the setup and the the point total and the how heavy of a favorite they are. But also Cincinnati has been pretty bad against the run. They're only they're giving up 22.5 DraftKings points a game. So I might lean Etienne over Trevor Lawrence there and put in. I like Engram too. Ingram's matchup is really good. Ingram's been letting us down with some good matchups lately, though. So it's tough guy to pull the trigger on. But let's see what the ownership is on Engram just in the flex. Looking at like around 46%. So he's a little bit high owned. Probably about 35% in the flex. So it's tough to pull the trigger on Engram. But I'm with you, Spread. He's got a really good matchup tonight, and at some point you got to figure he's gonna go off for a decent game. What do you think of switching out Lawrence for Etienne though?
Boy, that's fun.
Yeah.
You know what I think we should do? I'm just gonna build. Let's just build, and we'll just run one each.
Yeah. Okay.
So we'll start with Lawrence in here, but I don't think it's going to affect the rest of our build.
Okay.
Too much. So what I'm going to do is we're going to finish one or get pretty close, right? Because we can't give out the all six, but we're going to be pretty obvious where we're landing. And then I'll rebuild another one. I'll swap Etienne and Lawrence. And I think that's a fun way to approach this. You're going to have to take some stands, but I feel like we've taken it already by having Ridley instead of Trevor as our captain. Of course, Ridley should be somewhat popular, but I think that Etienne will be the second most popular captain, right? With the idea that the Jaguars are going to blow out the Bengals. However, I do believe the Bengals can keep this closer. I haven't bet this game yet, Simon. If I were to do it, though, I would take the points. I think that there's a chance that the Bengals can make this more competitive than expected tonight. So, third here, we got Engram in, but now we're down to 6,400 per player, which means we're going to have to start navigating some kickers, some defenses, and maybe looking down to the bottom if we want to jam in another stud. How do you want to keep going from here?
I think that we're going to need to put in one of these Bengals, and I'm leaning towards, obviously we're looking at a game where they're going to need to throw. So I'm looking at either Chase or Higgins. Higgins is coming off an injury, and all of the attention is going to be on Chase tonight. So that might open things up for Higgins to actually have the better night. Both those guys are cheap though. Like you're never going to see Chase below 10K like that. Like unless it's in a situation like this where he's with a backup quarterback, he's at 9,400 and Higgins is at 7,600. So both those guys are pretty cheap. But which way would you like to lean on that spread if we're using?
I think I'd like Chase a lot more. And my idea is he's the pure number one. And with Browning maybe struggling a little bit, right? A good opportunity for him to I think Chase does a better job of catching balls contested in coverage, right? So if we're going to YOLO it and throw it up, Chase is the guy that I want, because I think that, Walt might be a 50-50 ball. With Chase over there, it's like a 70-30, and he might rely on that. So I like Chase a little more here. I'm fine staying away from Higgins. Obviously, they're priced appropriately now, and with this start, we've really put ourselves behind the 8 ball here with trying to get the rest of these players in. Now we only have 4,900 left to fill this out. Where would you want to go if we have Chase in there?
So with Chase in there, I like Chase because we saw in the beginning of the season how they adjusted to Burrow's injury, and they were moving like Chase in the slot a lot more. They're doing a lot more with Jamar Chase to position Burrow to be able to hit him. So I think he's a guy that they can maneuver to help out Browning a lot, which is why I like Chase a lot. If I'm looking for a cheap guy after that, I think my favorite cheap guy is Brandon McManus. And I like McManus because he's a pedigree like kicker, but if you look at his game log, he has been basically in the optimal lineup for Jacksonville on numerous occasions this year. We see his stats. He's been putting up 14 DraftKings points last week, 10 the week before that, just like 16 one week, 17 one week, 14 one week, 10 one week. So he's got 14 to 17 point upside, even in these low scoring games. You look at his game against Atlanta, Jacksonville won 23-7, and McManus had 14 DraftKings points. If you look at him, like in this game against Pittsburgh, they won 20-10. He had 16 DraftKings points. So I really like McManus tonight, and at 5K, I think that's a pretty good price on a guy that I think has a good likelihood to make it into the optimal tonight. What do you think of him?
If you play McManus, you're going to love where you land. So yeah. I'm all in. I've already entered that one. I'm re-importing it, and I'm going to switch out Trevor for Etienne and then enter one more time. Is there any way I want to switch this?
Yeah, that like Spread's saying, that leaves us with 4,800. And if you look at the salary range there, it's Jacksonville's defense, which fits the build perfectly. You got Evan McPherson, which McPherson's going to have a tough time probably getting in. Bengals are going to have a tough time getting in scoring position in general if things are going badly for the Bengals tonight. But McPherson is another one of those long-range kickers. Let's see what he did last couple weeks. He got 5 DraftKings points against Pittsburgh, 10 against Baltimore. But he's had a few decent games in there too. Week 3 had 19 DraftKings points against the Rams, for example. So he has the potential upside. But other guys we have is Tanner Hudson. Tanner Hudson's a guy that's been interesting lately, Spread. He's been getting like 5 targets a game over the last several games, 5 last week, 4 the week before that, 7 and 5. And he's really a guy that they've incorporated into the offense ever since they came off that bye week. And, with the quarterback likely leaning on safety blankets in this slate, Tanner Hudson's an interesting guy at 4K. What do you think on the Tanner Hudson situation?
Yeah, I like Tanner Hudson, but going back to your earlier point, I think McPherson is something that someone we cannot discount. And my idea is this: I think Browning's going to be able to move the ball through the 20s. I think where he's really going to have problems is the red zone, and that's where McPherson comes in to counterbalance it. The concern, right, and why I'm not going all in and saying he's a lock, put him in every lineup, is if they do get down by too much, I'm worried they start going for it in those obvious field goal situations, like 4th and 5 under 25. If you're down by 2 scores, and they'll go for it every second half. One of my complaints, of course, right, is I say this is why we have totals in the 30s and the 40s no longer, because these teams leave points on the board. But that's my one concern about McPherson. But I want to have a lot of exposure to him, because I think that if the Bengals defense can do their job, he's going to have great opportunities tonight, because I could see Browning moving the ball 20-20 pretty well, and then stalling in the red zone.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that too. That's a good call there. McPherson, definitely a good play. Jags D, definitely a good play. You left with all sorts of options if you go in this direction for your build. I think for the for switching it up a little bit, like if I took Lawrence out and put in Etienne, and the reason why I think that this can work without having Trevor Lawrence in the lineup is because this is a week where I think maybe you can get like 18 to 20 DraftKings points and being the captain with such a low scoring game. And if Ridley is getting a decent amount of targets tonight, let's look at his targets he's gotten recently. 6 last week, 9 versus Tennessee. He only had 3 versus San Francisco, but he's been getting a decent amount of targets lately. And I don't think it's going to take a lot of targets for him to hit that captain spot. If he got 6 like last week against Houston, he scored 22 DraftKings points against Houston. I think he can get the captain with 22 DraftKings points. And that's not necessarily going to support a quarterback in the optimal lineup too, because if they abandon the passing game, like relatively early in this game, if it's not really going to be a competitive game, they're going to turn more to the running game. And I think if you're looking at Etienne at 10-2 and Lawrence at 10-8, I think eventually Etienne could surpass Lawrence and make Lawrence basically, obsolete if Etienne's able to pass him, because we're looking at guys in the same salary range there, and we want to get Chase in our lineup. So I can see this going with a Etienne as opposed to Lawrence, and that leaves us with 5,400 if we're doing the same build. Puts us basically in that same spot with the Jags D and Evan McPherson. I don't know how much I want to put in Zay Jones, just based on how he's been doing lately. Zay Jones, 2 DraftKings points last week, 6 the week before that. But also, if we're not going to have Lawrence in there, I don't know if I necessarily want 2 pass catchers in there. If we wanted to switch it up a little bit further, let's say that Chase is getting handled by this defense and it's leaving Higgins open a lot. We could put Higgins in there, and then that sets us up. We could put in a guy like Mixon with him, or like we could put in Boyd or someone like that. But that leaves us in a position to jam in at least one more of those more utilized guys with potential for those raw points. But what do you think of that direction spread?
Yeah, I like that a lot. And I think we have some interesting ways to go here. So, see, that's another one that's based off the Ridley captain, which is a fun way to go. But with all the talk about Etienne, Simon, I think we're getting some good ways to approach the Ridley. Are you interested in Etienne captain at all? I mean, when I was doing my prep for the show, I didn't think I would be, but you're starting to talk me into it. Should we be looking at maybe an Etienne captain here and the build that would go around that game script? I'm thinking if you do an Etienne captain, you've locked yourself into 5-1. If you do it, this game is 30-3. Bengals aren't moving the ball at all. Just choose your one Bengal player to run it back. But that's my idea on an Etienne captain. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I like Etienne too, because look at his last 3 weeks. He hasn't done shit. He's done like 13 DraftKings points last week, 9 the week before that, and 6 the week before that. So that's going to take some of the give us some relief in a captain spot. But Spread and I had him as the captain against Buffalo, and that's the last time that people were kind of down on him because he had a slow start to the season, and he ended up hitting 39 points that week. But this is another one of those weeks where he's just got a good matchup, and Etienne does pretty well in those good matchups. And they're giving up 22.5 DraftKings points a game to that running back position. So I definitely am going to have some exposure to Etienne in that captain spot for sure.
All right, let's start there. So you start the Etienne, you have 15-3, 34-7. In this build, do we stay away from Trevor?
I think we do stay away from Trevor, but I still like Ridley because I think we're going to need to get Etienne set up to score touchdowns. What do you think of that?
All right, so we got 2 right there. Now we're at 25.5 for our last 4 spots. That gives us an average of 63.75. Let's get this out of the way right now. Who do we run it back with this is a Bengals blowout build.
I think it's Chase again.
Okay. You're not
Just
worried
because
about spending too much money on a blowout. Sometimes on my blowout builds, I just punt the run back.
yeah, I mean I don't hate using Higgins either. Like I think one of those dudes is going to be getting peppered with targets tonight, and it's just going to depend on how much coverage Chase has and how much he's able to beat that coverage. But I think it could be a situation where they decide to focus the entire
Let's go
defense.
with Higgins. It saves us money, and we don't want to spend too much on a Bengals blowout.
Yeah.
Right? We want to be able to jam Bengals in there. The other, you know what? Let's run back with the kicker instead. Look how much money now we have for. Now I can get Trevor in here, really.
So if we do that, we can get. You want to put Trevor Lawrence in next?
Yeah. And then you're going to have to do a little dumpster diving. But Simon, I know that's why people tune in here. I think everybody knows that Trevor and Etienne and Ridley are good plays here. How do we fill this out? So, and this interesting one. What do you like here in this range below like 2K? Because I'll be honest, I'm not interested in. I mean, we can build a Bengals defense build later, but not in this one. And I'm not interested in Bigsby at all tonight. That's a fun one for our best ball shares, right? That we all loved, and you get him in the 12th round, did absolutely nothing. The one that I like, Simon, is Irv Smith. What do you think, though? Because he's hasn't been huge this week. His Sample seems to have taken over. Maybe we should put Sample in here.
Well, I think Irv Smith and Sample. They're going to be running. Last week they ran a lot of 2 tight end sets, and Tanner Hudson has been the main guy that they're throwing to, but you got to figure Irv Smith and Sample are going to be getting plenty of playing time and probably several opportunities each. So if you wanted to go with one of those guys, like I don't hate it. I also don't hate Tank Bigsby.
You don't? Okay. So see that I was thinking I don't want to play him. Why do you like Tank?
The only reason I'm thinking for Tank Bigsby is if it becomes a blowout like we're talking about, then you got to figure that at some point, like maybe in the 4th quarter or something. We've seen it with Dallas a bunch of times where they just start using like their backups. Etienne is a little dinged up tonight, and maybe they don't want him to go a full game. And Etienne could have easily scored like 2-3 touchdowns by the time we get to that 3rd quarter, like or closer to the 4th quarter. That leaves Tank Bigsby in a position to kind of take over as the main running back to grind out the game. And if he busts one out, then we might be looking at him with an ability to score, like maybe 5 to 10 points. If he scores 10 points, then Bigsby, I think could make an optimal lineup, especially if we're trying to jam in all these studs.
All right, you sold me because this is our blowout build. I want to, I don't know what the right word is, right? But make a note, right? Have it noted for the record that we're only doing this in a Bengals blowout. I mean, Jaguars blowout build.
Yeah.
Any other one, I'm not really too interested there in Tank Bigsby. But I throw them in this one here, and then everyone can finish it off. And as you can see, you have plenty of money there. Oh, wait. How much do you have left there?
I got 7,900.
Yeah, so plenty. So you have plenty of options.
Yeah, if you have 7,900, you could go with Higgins because you're going to want somebody to set up McPherson, or if you want to do the 5-1, you got like you also got Mixon, but you got Engram.
I don't think you play Mixon in a blowout build. The only way you get there is dump offs.
Right. Yeah. So
like check it out. Did Browning target him that much last week as dump offs?
Let's check his log. I only see 2 targets last week and 5 targets for.
And that's what I was going off the top of my head. I don't remember him dumping off a lot. He's got a strong arm and he's trying to show it off. So I don't like mixing it all tonight unless you're building a complete contrarian build. And are we ready for that? Do we want to have some fun here?
I don't like mixing either. Actually, now that I'm looking at what Jacksonville is giving up, they're only giving up 19 DraftKings points a game to the running back position, which is one of the their
worst. Running defense is much better than their pass defense. I know that just from betting on the team. And that's the teams that can run the ball against them are the teams that Jacksonville struggles with. So
but
they can pass the ball.
The much better matchup is the one that Engram has, and Engram, you got Cincinnati allowing 16 DraftKings points a game to the tight end position, which is a ton. So Engram, I think he's definitely going to be standing out tonight. And if we have Lawrence in this build without a wide receiver captain, he's going to need a second receiver that he's throwing to. And I would say Engram would be like probably the lean that I would have in this build.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
All right. Do we want to test the waters? Do you think it's worth it to build some Bengals builds?
I think so. I think it's always worth it. I think.
All right, let's have some fun with the Jake Browning coming out party.
Yeah, I think if it's going to be any type of success on the Bengals, it's going to be Jamar Chase. So let's look at his ownership. Jamar Chase, I'm seeing projected under 9% ownership in the captain spot. So that makes him very, very interesting because we're never going to see that with Chase at 9,600 or whatever his cost is, with under 9% ownership in the captain spot. So we can have some fun with that spread. I take it you want to start Browning with Chase?
Yeah, you have to, right?
Let's get him in.
All right, so we go Chase. Then we go Browning. Now we have 27 left, 27-1 left, 67.5. I still think we run it back with 2 Jaguars here.
Yep.
I mean, I don't think that we have a 30-3 script, right?
No, be competitive.
Cincinnati just completely shuts them down. Right. We've talked about Ridley all day. He almost seems to just be the guy that we're going to just keep in here no matter what.
Yeah. One way that I like to go with this direction too, spread, is the Cincinnati defense is a defense that's well coached. They haven't been great this year, but they have great players on it, like Hendrickson, and they've got some good corners. I think that with their wounded animal mentality, being in a game where they know that they're going to have to put a lot on their backs, these are the type of spots that I like to actually target those defenses on teams that have a lot of pride, but they're in a tough spot, and that's the spot that these Bengals are in now. What do you think about the Bengals defense?
I like it because we've gone pretty expensive for our top 3, and we're not going to be able to just get everyone in there. That's a lot. That's a fun way to do it. So we got Chase, Browning, Ridley. We're throwing that Bengals D. Now we're at 73 left per player.
Yeah.
Can I Higgins?
Yeah. There
fills out pretty well.
Yeah.
You plenty of options there.
You threw Higgins in next. Okay, yeah. So that makes sense. Yeah.
And you'll see where you land, and that's a fun one.
Yeah. Now that's a 5-1 build. I think one direction.
Oh, we want to go 4-2 though. Who would be the other person to run it back with rather than
Engram? I'd say maybe Engram. Engram and Etienne, I think, have the best matchups on the Jag side. But I like Ridley. My gut's telling me Ridley tonight. So I like keeping him in there. But I think
we do
direction. Yeah, we could get Engram in there still. One other thing, spread. If we take out Higgins and we put in, let's say that, like, we're thinking this through, right? We got Chase and the captain, and Browning is throwing them the ball. We know that the Bengals defense is stepping up. They got Ridley on the other side. I think in this case, like they're getting stalled out. They're not scoring a lot of points. So maybe McManus, we can get into this build as like the second guy. That leaves us with 9,700. And that sets us up with options like Kirk and Higgins. And then Mixon again. So I mean that gives us a ton of options too. And I think this script is more of a low scoring script. Which I think is what we're going to need for like Browning to pull it off. Is that the Jags might not be firing on all cylinders tonight? But what do you think there?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think this is a fun one, although unfortunately, I don't know how likely it is. Right, so if I do the same thing I usually do, where I have between 10 and 15, we're only going to do a couple of these, but I think it's fun to explore because we've talked about this before. The ways to get contrarian, and it feels like the nights that we've had the worst success when I've come on the show with you is the nights that 252 people dupe up top.
Yeah,
because it's the complete chalk build that hits, and we talk about avoiding chalk, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to win every night doing that.
Right.
What it means is on the nights that you find that proper game script, you're more likely to take home a bigger prize.
Yeah, for sure. So Spread, is there you want to try one more fun one? Do you want to try another Bengals build? Do you want to go a different direction with it, or what do you think?
I think that's enough Bengals builds, don't you?
Yeah, I think
how likely do you really think it is?
It's 10% likely, so
that's why I made 2 right now while we were talking. I'm pretty happy with those. I'm gonna have Chase in both of them, right?
Right.
I mean, I guess unless we want to do a Browning build where he's at the captain, but how much different is it really going to be? It just feels like you're just swapping those two. Because if Browning's your captain, you have to play Chase.
Right.
So let's build one more Jaguars build because I think those are going to be the more fun ways to go. I mean, do we want to do a chalk build with Trevor on top just to see where everyone's landing? I mean, we don't even have to enter it, but let's try and just see.
I will
throw Trevor in on top. You throw some Ridley in there because I think Trevor and Ridley correlate much more. Although Etienne is active out of the backfield.
Yeah.
Boy, if you throw all 3 in there, you're dumpster diving, but that might work.
We are for if we throw those guys all in, like I don't really hate it. We do need another.
I don't either because you end up just playing defenses and kickers to run it back.
Right.
My question is, if this ends up being the build that catches on top, how much am I going to split it with?
It depends on how much how different we get. Because if we put Trevor in the captain, we have to build it differently than everybody else. And I think that when people build Trevor in the captain, they're going to be putting him with 2 pass catchers. But Lawrence is a guy that could get in the captain by rushing in 2 touchdowns tonight. He could rush in 2 touchdowns. He could be getting a bunch of yards to Ridley. And maybe he throws like a touchdown to Etienne, and that sets them up well for this trio to obviously be all that we need in that offense. Maybe we throw in McManus or the Jaguars defense to kind of go along with it. Maybe the defense is setting up Lawrence in scoring position, so he's getting those easy rushing touchdowns. He doesn't need to throw it as much, but he's getting enough of those easy touchdowns so that he can get in that captain spot. So maybe we throw in that Jags D. We got to get a run back here. Like who do you like as a run back if we're building it like this, where we're seeing a bunch of good field position for the Jags. Lawrence has taken advantage of it with a couple, 1 or 2 rushing touchdowns. Etienne, gets a touchdown in there too, and Ridley's getting whatever PPR points are available. So what do you think on the other side there, Brett?
McPherson?
Or do you think that's too much of a blowout build? I'm just saying we spent a lot of money already.
Yeah.
Right. And if I go, I don't know. I guess we could run it back with Chase. If you run it back with Chase, how much does that leave you with?
If we ran it back with Chase, that would give us $200.
Yeah, so you can't. Okay, so that's out. This is a blowout build, so Mixon's out. You can consider Higgins. You could try and get cute with Tyler Boyd, but he has not been good this year.
Yeah.
Remember when it felt like they had just those top threes, and Boyd could be a star in any other team. He's definitely regressed a little bit, although it could be one of those ones where it's his breakout night, new quarterback. But in the last game, he had 5 targets, I guess. But
yeah,
I don't know.
I think we pretty much, the best matchup that's going to be on the Cincinnati side is one of those wide receivers, and I think if we can't get Chase in there, then we probably want to have Higgins. Those might be the only two, like run backs that I use tonight, either Chase or Higgins. So I think depending on salary, like this would lean me more towards Higgins. And if I got Higgins in there, looking at 2K left, and that puts us in those tight end range. We got Sample and Irv Smith, who both, either one of those guys could get a touchdown. They also got Wilcox on Cincinnati. I wouldn't lean there. But I'm trying to look and see if we got any other options in the dumpster for a build like this. Maybe we swap out the Jags defense if they're 4,800. If we swap, McManus is actually more expensive, so it wouldn't work. I think if you put in one of those, one of those tight ends on the Irv Smith spread mentioned earlier, he's interesting. Just because we know that they wanted him to be a pass catching tight end, but it didn't work out. So they made the adjustment to Tanner, and now we have a new quarterback. So maybe Irv Smith develops a little bit more chemistry with Browning. He got 2 targets only last week. But I mean, you can make a case for him or Sample. Like Sample had 1 target last week and it was like a touchdown catch. So that he's going to be looked at if they get in the red zone. So I don't know, man. Like I would probably lean Sample over Smith. But what do you think on those two guys?
I think they're fun options because I think young quarterbacks like to go to tight ends with the idea that it's going to be a mismatch, and even if something goes wrong, they're not going to get yelled at for making a bad read because they did at least go after the linebacker or the safety and not the number 1 corner. So I think it's fun. The problem is it feels like a roll of the dice. Who's that actually going to be in there tonight? So I don't know. Can we afford? We can't afford Hudson, can we?
No, he's
so it comes down to let's go Sample on this one.
Okay. Yeah,
it feels like even though Irv Smith is the bigger name, quote unquote, Sample's been getting more playing time lately, and probably is playing better. And he does more things that the team wants as far as that he's probably a better blocker. I'm not the best scout, but it seems that way to me.
Right. And I do think that, like the way that they went more 2 tight end sets last week, that's probably obviously, like by some sort of design to protect Browning a little bit. It's going to put them like more opportunity for these guys. I think if you do a Sample build, you want to duplicate it and do a Smith build too. I think that's basically the best way to handle that situation. Just make sure
you do that then, and that's fun. That's a fun way to do it.
Yeah. So you do.
Hold on, let me make sure I got it down. It's Lawrence. I don't know why did he not go in captain. Lawrence, Ridley, Etienne. All right, there we have it from there. That's a good one.
Yep.
And then you can swap out the bottom.
Yeah. So that's another option for tonight. I think that'll be. If I'm looking at the optimal likes Trevor Lawrence the most in the captain. The optimal goes with Lawrence, Brandon McManus, Then they go Jaguars D. They go Engram. They go Mixon. And then you can use your imagination for that last spot. But I mean, that's like probably the first optimal that I've seen, like out of the optimizer that I look at and I'm like, yeah, like I like that lineup, because usually spread like the ones that we've been looking at recently, I just like they have like one of these scrubby guys in there that neither of us like, or like it's just like something that isn't. It doesn't seem like a good build, but like this actually seems like a good build that they got in the captain. They just swapped out Ridley for Engram. So maybe that's the only thing that I don't like about it. But it's a build where every piece seems to make sense. I might swap out Lawrence for Etienne if that's possible in that build.
Yeah, and this is a fun way to go.
Yep.
Really, it comes down to on the Cincinnati blowout build. Mm-hmm. How did they get there?
Right. Yep, exactly.
Do they get there through defense, special teams, field position, and Lawrence doesn't rack up stats? They get the early lead, and then it's Etienne season. Or does Lawrence come out kind of like what we saw with the Detroit game yesterday, right?
Yep.
They're just on fire, right? Laporta, St. Brown, right? All these guys are scoring touchdowns, and then they kind of, fall off a little bit, and they're running to protect that lead. So definitely a lot of fun different ways to approach tonight's games. Wouldn't you agree?
I agree for sure. And I would reiterate to anyone watching, these underdogs, they hit a decent amount. So make sure you're putting a couple builds in there, like with Cincinnati, even though, like it might make you puke in your mouth a little bit, but get them in there, because when these underdogs hit, like especially in Showdown, then you will find
you don't have to be perfect.
Exactly.
Your Jaguars blowout build is going to have to be perfect. It's going to have to be optimal. There's more margin for error, especially if you're wading into some smaller contests, right? Maybe throw some of those in a single entry, because you don't have to be perfect, and everyone's going to single enter a Jaguars build, right? If you only have one entry with 20, right? It was easy for us to go ahead and say, hey, let's build some Cincinnati builds, right? Let's throw away a couple. Jake Browning captain, Jamar Chase captain, right? Let's have some fun. Yeah. But in the single entry, that's where contrarian might really help, because you can miss the optimal and still be way, way on top if Jake Browning is able to finally live up to his potential.
Yep. So, well, let's hope that we can get a couple decent ones in there with the Bengals, and let's hope it goes in the Bengals direction. I just think that would be more fun in general to watch a game like that. And
wasn't last night fun?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
That was a great game. And Chiefs were laying 6, and it was never fun, and that was fun for me because I had the +6.
Yep.
When that happens and you sit there and you go, why didn't I play the money line? But hey, what didn't they have that much foresight, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I liked about that game, I mean, yesterday, like I built lineups focusing on the Packers. I just had the wrong receiver. Like I put Jaden Reed instead of Christian Watson in that captain spot. But if you're watching too, listen to the strategy. Listen to the strategy when we're building these lineups. You don't have to agree with the players. Swap out the players if you want. But it's the strategy is the main point that we're trying to get across here is, like yesterday, if you'd have put my lineup in there and you swapped out Watson for Jaden Reed, you would have made a good amount of money yesterday, because it was a Green Bay favored build and Green Bay ended up beating the Chiefs. We faded Mahomes yesterday. I said put 2 of either Pacheco, Rashid Rice, Kelsey, and Mahomes in there. I said put 2 of those guys in every lineup, and you don't need to put Mahomes in any lineups really, but I'm just going to loop them in that group. And it ended up being Pacheco and Rice were the 2 that you needed. So if you'd have set a rule to get like at least 2 of that group in every lineup, you would have been in position, especially if you used a Green Bay receiver in the captain. And Jordan Love was the guy, that I was high on yesterday too, not in the captain, but in the flex. But if you'd have used that strategy, you would have been in good shape yesterday. And that's the point that we're trying to do with these shows. Spread and I aren't going to be right on our picks every time, obviously. Otherwise, we'd be millionaires. And sometimes, like, you're going to be watching the show and you're going to have a piece of insight that we don't have on a particular player.
Yeah, especially like if you're a Bengals fan and you have an idea, like, hey, this is the tight end that Browning likes. I remember that from preseason week 2 when I was trying to ignore it because preseason was ruining all my best ball drafts.
Exactly.
Making me think that Kenny Pickett was the next coming of Terry Bradshaw.
Oh, God, way too much Pickett, man. But yeah, on that note, why don't you guys hit the
let me give you a final best ball question,
Yeah.
Simon. We're having fun and we did up a little early. How far do you, after watching last night, I said, boy, Kelsey's beat up. Where do you think he's going to end up being ranked last year? I know he was really popular right in that 4th slot last year. And boy, a lot of people were trying to decide between Kelsey and Hill, right? In those live shows when you landed right around 4 or 5. How far does Kelsey drop next year? Overall, the stud tight ends have been terrible this year.
Yeah, I would say you probably get those stud tight ends back in like those third to 5th rounds.
You think he'll be down in the 30s for Yankees next year?
I think I wouldn't be surprised to see him. He's still like, I think the top 1 or 2 fantasy tight end. So he's still like producing.
Right, because no one has really stepped up, right, and taken the mantle.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's still going to be in demand, but I think he drops a little bit further. Like we used to see Gronk up in the top, 2 rounds, and then he would have a bust year, and then he'd drop like maybe to the 3rd round. People are still going to want that name brand, so they're still going to draft him. I think the demand will be a little bit less. Maybe he falls in early 3rd or something like that. Like he's getting old, man, and you can tell. And
he looks beat up, and I don't. Maybe he comes back healthy next year, and boy, I mean, now that this team's looking vulnerable, not having to play all the way to February, I know that Chiefs fans probably don't want to hear that. It was just curious. That's just kind of what I thought. So, I actually didn't watch the game live last night. I went home and I watched it on tape after I knew the result.
Right. And I think
and that was my main takeaway. This guy looks beat up. He's starting to look old. He can still find the pockets in the zones, but it's not that breakaway. Right. Even what we saw 2 years ago where he made that huge play against Buffalo. I don't know if this visible incarnation of him has that. That was just the number one thought. I said, boy, Kelsey's going to drop in these best ball drafts. Next year.
He's in every other freaking commercial that pops up now. He's becoming like Baker level with all the commercials.
Right.
And on top of that, he's got all the exposure with the Taylor Swift situation. So he's a dude who's old. He's had a ton of success in his career. He's just coming off a Super Bowl.
And he's hanging around with the richest woman on the planet.
Yeah, he's with Taylor Swift. Like, his priority right now is not football. Like, it's not football right now. Like he's taking advantage of all the work that he's put in throughout his career, and he's cashing in. And I don't blame him one bit. Like,
no, not at all. That was just my major takeaway. Besides the fact that, and we message each other. Boy, you remember about week 4 or 5 when I came on the show and told you Jordan Love's terrible. They messed up. This is not going to work. And I still believe I'm reading this huge extension. I think that will be a mistake. You can't give the guy $40 million. He's still not there yet, but we'll see where it goes. But other than my takeaway that, boy, Jordan Love had something here. And that made me think, like, boy, the Jets are stupid. They should just let Zach Wilson run. At least, with a guy with talent, there's a chance. With Boyle or whoever they put out, or Simeon, they don't even have the talent.
Well,
so, those are my random thoughts from last night to end the show.
Well, I mean, the thing too with the Jets is it doesn't matter who you put back there. The offensive line is just shit. It sucks. So, like,
which is why I'd rather have the athlete that can at least move.
Exactly. Like, Zach Wilson was running for his life on every play. His confidence was shot. So, like, he has the talent, all the talent, like in the world. He just can't get it together. and he's not going to be able to get it together with that offensive line. And none of these backup scrub quarterbacks that they try to throw in there is going to do any better. Like Zach Wilson was the best that they had. And, they basically just, shot all his confidence. And now the blurb I saw this morning is that Zach Wilson doesn't even want to play anymore. Like they want him to start, and he's hesitant to start now because they've just destroyed his confidence. So, I don't blame him. Like imagine being in that freaking New York market where the Jets haven't won in decades. You're thrust into that starting quarterback role because the offensive line let Aaron Rodgers, just get beat up in that first game. He ends up rupturing his Achilles. And then you have to step into that role with all those expectations for the team in the year. And your offensive line, it just sucks. And you're getting killed every freaking night and you're getting blamed for it every night. It's like, I don't blame him. I wouldn't want to step into that either. But like, it's just such a horrible situation for a quarterback of the Jets. And I wouldn't want to be in that spot, man. But
yeah, so there's some overall football thoughts from us to go with these winning lineups we just built.
So make sure to hit that like button, get us to 15 so I can put out that shorter video later on. Hit the subscribe button on this page. Looking to get up to 300 subscribers. Spread, where can they find your next show?
I'm going to be on Nuke the House at 3 p.m. Eastern today, but that one is some replay value because we'll be reviewing the week. And just follow me at Spread Astaire on Twitter/X.
Perfect. You can follow me at Pumacom over on X, and we will see you hopefully a little later on tonight. So get me to that 15 likes.